Since the beginning of creating this channel, you've heard me talk about myself as a starseed, where I came from and how I got here. Over time, I've shared various experiences with ET friends and travels to other realms, and it's taken me many years to finally be somewhat comfortable about being here in this human body, on this mysterious realm of planet Earth, this experiment, a testing ground for ET souls to eagerly drop down into the heaviness of the third density and challenge themselves through both the joys and the trials, and to finally remember who they are and to make their way back home. So here I am now speaking to so many others who are traveling this same road, the path to remembering who we are. Who am I? And where did I come from? And for some, it might begin like it did for me, where you wake up in the morning and wonder if anything in your life is real. Well, that was me. Actually, for me, it was more wondering if I'm real, this body, this life. Often, as I would gaze around at all the familiar surroundings, they all seemed so synthetic, like a reproduction of something greater. And I couldn't help but wonder how all this happened, that I'm here and not somewhere else. That somewhere that I can't quite fully recall. That place that seems more home than this place. And I would nearly always feel a bit like only part of me is here. And I ache to know where that place is that I came from. That place with the vast sky and the almost inconceivable blanket of stars. Recalling it almost like a dream. A dream that I somehow was forced out of. Like I was extracted from the me-ness that made up who I am as an awareness, as a being, as a body. And the more I try to summon that memory, the more distant it becomes. Over the years, I've managed to sort of set it all off to the side and allow it to become a purpose or an intended goal, to recognize any sign hidden within this reality that might restore the full memory and maybe even discover a way back to that realm that I think of as home. Speaking of realities, I remember one day several years ago, my sister and niece were visiting, and during a conversation about life in general, one of them, I don't remember which, asked me what I was most interested in at that time. And without thinking about it, I blurted out that I wanted to know more about the nature of reality and how we create our own reality, and if so, how we can change it. Well, that totally stopped the conversation right there. But after they left, I began a deeper contemplation about that concept and what's real and what's not real, and how to know the difference. Or is everything real or nothing real? Well, I know by now we're probably all a bit tired of hearing about the double slit experiment showing that light and matter can behave both as waves and particles, depending upon whether they're being observed or not. So maybe I'll forego that explanation and begin with Plato's cave instead, which we're also probably really getting tired of. But just to make a point, Plato's allegory of the cave is a story in which a group of prisoners are chained to a wall and have spent all of their lives in a dark cave, facing another wall. Well, passing behind them is life, where all sorts of people and animals and vehicles pass by day and night, and in the light of a fire casts the shadows of these events onto the wall in front of the prisoners. And since this is all the prisoners have ever seen, these shadows become their entire reality. Well, one day, one of the prisoners escapes and makes it outside. Well, obviously, at first the sun blinds him, but once his eyes acclimate to his brighter surroundings, and he begins to realize how much more real these objects are than just the shadows he's seen before. Well, finally, he returns to the prisoners and tells them what he's seen. And, but because they have no reference for the descriptions of color and substance, they don't believe him, and they think he's crazy. So, what does this mean? Well, it means that reality is merely a perception. This is very much what happens to one who has learned to travel out of body into higher dimensional worlds, or one who has had a near-death experience, where they've seen things they've never seen in their normal lives. Well, when they try to tell others of this amazing reality, others think they've lost their mind. Well, understanding that the world we live in is not the reality we believed it was can be a little disorienting, but it can also free us from the darkness of the cave we've lived in previous to this knowledge. So what Plato was trying to tell us is that our world is not what it seems, and that we are actually in a prison of our own. We believe that material objects are what is most real. But what Plato was trying to get across to us is that the reality we consider to be real is just a mere shadow of a higher reality, a more lofty or elevated truth. So, what is that truth? And why do most people not see it or even believe it's there? And do we have to have a near-death experience to become aware of this higher dimension? If we continue to accept the world as we've always thought it was, we're back in the prison, where things are the way we've been taught through our five senses. However, going beyond that into a world of the unknown can be scary and might cause us to want to just jump right back into the normal reality, which may be a lie, but at least it's familiar. I remember going over and over the idea that if the material world is not real, what is? And am I even real? What about my thoughts, my beliefs, those things that make me unique, different than anyone else? My dreams, my likes and dislikes. And do these things make me conscious Or am I conscious and therefore possess these things? And what about the brain? Does the brain create consciousness, or does it just receive it? There is account after account of those who have been outside of their body and are still who they are. Research by Dr. Peter Fenwick, a neuropsychiatrist of the highest regard, he's an amazing guy, has been researching the human brain and consciousness through the study of the near-death phenomenon for more than 50 years now. And through his extensive research, he now believes that consciousness is an inherent property of the universe, like gravity or dark matter, existing and outside of the brain, independently, and continuing to exist after the death of the body. One example of this, of which there are thousands, but just to pick one, the near-death experience of Dr. Eben Alexander shows us that when someone dies and is brain dead, their consciousness goes on. Dr. Alexander was effectively brain dead. His brain wasn't even functioning at all. Yet his consciousness, who he is, was having very detailed experiences in a higher reality. He even met a girl in that reality who he didn't know, and found out after he recovered that the girl that he had met on the other side was his sister, whom he had not only never met, but never knew existed. His parents had never told him that he had a sister who had died. So the brain does not create reality, it filters it. This is a big part of what science discusses as the hard problem of consciousness, which is hoping to explain why and how the brain gives rise to consciousness, such as thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. And of course, what makes it hard is that the brain does not give rise to consciousness. So, as long as they remain stuck into this old framework, they'll never be able to solve the so-called hard problem. It'll take going beyond objective reality and the concept of particles and space and time. Consciousness is not just a consequence of our brain functioning, but a fundamental feature of the universe. So before any of us are able to advance beyond this idea that the brain produces consciousness, we'll have to be able to consider consciousness as a prevalent and basic force. Time and space are illusions, and consciousness is not generated from the brain, but is a fundamental aspect of the universe, and therefore of all reality, giving rise to the geometric properties of the material world. So, what if my world is not what it seems, and current reality is not real at all? Well, much of our interpretation of this is the language of the word real. What if we instead use a different word? If the world is not real, does this mean that the material objects themselves are not real? That matter itself is an illusion, a dream? Or does it mean that the world is real, but we're not? In other words, is it we that are simply imagining the world into reality. So here's where it gets crazy. Yeah, I've mentioned this before, but the 2022 Nobel Prize was given to a group of scientists who, for their experiments with entangled photons, were able to prove that the universe is not locally real. Wow. So what this means is that particles, when separated, even by great distances, are still invisibly connected. So when something happens to one particle, the other is simultaneously affected, instantaneously, no matter the distance. Separation is an illusion. Therefore, everything we do or think or even feel is not only physical, but also spiritual, and has a deep impact on not only ourselves, but everything around us. It's like a great energy field, an invisible network that unites all living beings. So, by understanding and observing this universal force and deliberately aligning with it, we can begin to create our own reality through the role of consciousness, where the particle's behavior is outside of the flow of linear time and space. Through focusing on a desired situation as if it's already occurred, we can bend time and bring the future event into the present. So, is there really an external reality? Well, quantum physics shows us that the reality around us is not fixed until we observe it. Before that, it exists as states of potential possibilities. In consciousness, consciousness is sort of a constant observer, forming what we perceive through our beliefs and intentions, collapsing into our experience. As an aside, even if we were to decide that the world does exist, what we see of our reality through our eyes is not only derived from our own expectations, but built upon our anticipation and beliefs and suppositions. What we see is what we expect to see through our opinions and impressions. So the other part of seeing is actually decided or determined before we open our eyes to visually observe what's around us. Our dreams, for example, those things we are participating with in that world are very real to us, just like here. In that world, we can touch people and objects, but we can also fly. So while we're in the dream, we are living in a reality that holds a different rule set. For example, in that reality, we can fly. So this is real to us. But when we wake up, we can no longer fly. Now, is this just because we believe we can't fly? Or does reality really have a rule that says humans cannot fly? So, could our reality be what we perceive through our senses? Well, neuroscientist Donald Hoffman often states exactly that it's our senses that are actually creating the things that we perceive. that we experience, like colors and taste, and that these things are not properties of an objective reality, but are actually properties of our senses, and that they, our senses, are making up. Yet, those things we perceive with our senses are not real as such, but what is real is our experience with those things. That pain in your wrist is a real experience to you, but only exists within your own awareness of it. On the other hand, objective reality and perceptive reality are not always the same. Never take things at face value. There's always more than meets the eye. For example, what are our beliefs made from? Where do they come from? Is it really me who feels that particular way, or have I been influenced to feel that way? Therefore, this is the world that I see. So the question remains, why do we believe what we believe? And which comes first? Perceptive reality or objective reality as the reality that makes up our lives? So what exactly is perception? Perception itself is a lessening or decreasing of a thing. And this is because the information that you get from, let's say, looking at a flower, for example, is only a fraction of all the information that flower actually holds. We can look at it from all angles and yet not receive all the information that it owns. Yet, observing the flower does initiate within us an interpretation of that object. We gather data through our senses and deduce from that sensory information our perception of this object, the flower. So there's no total insight that gives us all of the information of the flower, or nearly any other object or situation as far as that goes. So what can we take away from all of this? Well, as always, in anything we contemplate, our capacity and readiness to take on and accept several diverse points of view and integrate them into what goes beyond that one single viewpoint, into many perspectives, it is truly foundational in the potential for guiding our own reality into one of diversity and love. Oh my gosh, I actually wanted to add another concept into all this, and that is Dr. Robert Lanza's biocentric universe, where life creates time and space, and the entire cosmos itself. That our consciousness creates the universe, and that the universe could not exist without us. Oh, but I guess that will have to wait for another video, because if I don't stop here, I'm going to take a chance of losing my entire audience. So another time. Well, for those of you who are still with me here, thank you so much for listening. And I hope to see you all again really soon. Bye-bye.